I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Hello and welcome to Strength for Tomorrow Radio with me, Stuart Thompson. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you're having a great week or have had a great week. There's no show last week. To be honest, I had planned, I had hoped to put a show together, but I just didn't get quite finished. Got close to it, but didn't get it finished. I had kind of run out of time. I was going on holidays for a few days and I was trying to get lots of stuff prepared before I left. So I was busy getting all of that done. But this week, I'm going to discuss what you were going to discuss last week, which is fitness. How do you define fitness? Who's fit? Who isn't fit? What classifies as being fit? Many people, I guess, whenever they think of fitness, they think of it simply in terms of cardiovascular capacity. So somebody maybe who can run a marathon, somebody who can swim the English Channel, or somebody maybe who can row a very far distance or can cycle a really far distance. But there are lots of other aspects of fitness than simply cardiovascular endurance. So today we're going to discuss them, why they're important, and why we need to make sure that we are at least decently rounded in all of them if we want to live healthy lives. So all of that to come, plus news of the week. We've got a few stories to round up on, and joke of the week, the best bit. So yeah, like we said, we want to discuss some of the other components that make up fitness. What is fitness? It's not just your cardiovascular capacity. It's not just being able to run really far, being able to run a 10k or a 5k or whatever. There's other components to it, and CrossFit, I think, for all you can criticize CrossFit for all you want, and you can go down and say it injures people, blah blah blah, and they do kip and pull ups, they don't do full range of motion, blah blah blah, whatever. Have those criticisms if you want, but one thing that CrossFit have done that I think that is really positive, and you can't really criticize them very much for, is they've tried to define fitness. They've tried to put certain markers down, certain things, certain aspects which make up fitness, and no one else really seems to have done that, and I think they've done a really good job of it. So I'm going to read out, they've got 10 components of fitness here that are they believe make up what fitness is. So the first one is, and again, they're probably in no particular order. I guess they're listing them in this order for a reason, but for me, they're in no particular order. I probably would have a preference as to which ones I would put where, but first one is cardiovascular / respiratory endurance. So this is, I'm going to explain them a bit more as we go. Number 2 is stamina. Number 3 is strength. Number 4 is flexibility. Number 5 is power. Number 6 is speed. Number 7, coordination. Number 8, agility. Number 9, balance. Number 10, accuracy. So there's some of them are quite similar to each other. There's other ones that are really at different ends of the spectrum, as it were. Cardiovascular endurance and power, cardiovascular endurance and strength. They seem to be quite different. But the first one I want to talk about is cardiovascular / respiratory endurance. So what got me thinking about all this has been the CrossFit Games, which were on a couple of weeks ago, started on the Wednesday and they ended on the Sunday, and they tested all of these things. They take pride in testing all of these things and figuring out who is the fittest man, who is the fittest woman on earth this particular year. So the tests that they did, they can look a bit wacky, they can look a bit out there, they can look a bit extreme, and for us mere mortals, they kind of are, but for those guys, it's their bread and butter, it's their breakfast really. So first of all, cardiovascular or respiratory endurance. So this is the ability of the body systems to gather, process and deliver oxygen. This is what CrossFit defines it as. This is one of the components of fitness that they define it as. There's actually a quote in one of their journals that says, and it's called, if you want to look it up, it's called What About Cardio? It's by Greg Glassman, who founded CrossFit. So the quote is this: "For too many people, cardio is something good that happens to their heart and lungs only while sitting on a bike or running." Now, things like cardiovascular endurance, stamina, those terms can sometimes be used synonymously. We can sometimes get confused about stamina and about endurance. They're not the same. We're going to come on to stamina next, but they're not the same thing. And cardiovascular endurance, I suppose another way of looking at it is cardiovascular capacity. How much oxygen can you basically, use? Okay. Process, so it's gathering, the process and delivery of oxygen. So that is probably the typical way we think of fitness. How well can you do this? So a VO2 max is quite a common way to measure this, and the top athletes, if you measure the VO2 max, it's something insane, something that us mere mortals could only dream of, and dreaming's probably what most of us only should do, because the levels that they're at is insane. But cardiovascular, sometimes we do just think of it as biking or running or swimming or rowing or other things that are kind of slow, steady state efforts. And there is lots of other components to it, but whenever you do something like running, there are other elements at play. But cardiovascular and respiratory endurance is a big component of being good at running or rowing or cycling or swimming, things like that. But it is interesting whenever you do things like, say, a body weight exercise. So you say you combine a number of exercises like pull-ups, push-ups, squats, burpees, something like that, and you get someone to try and do it for 20 or 30 minutes, say a few reps of each. Now, you might typically think of pull-ups as a strength exercise. I wouldn't define it as a strength exercise. I think it's a body weight strength exercise, but once you can kind of do 1 or 10, then it goes from being a strength exercise to being a endurance exercise. And whenever you combine them with other things like burpees, like bodyweight squats, like push-ups, you're using different muscle groups. You're not, if you try not to structure it in such a way that you're not training each muscle group to failure, so you're not doing so many pull-ups that your biceps and your lats are blown out. You're not going to do so many push-ups that your triceps and your chest are smoked. You're not going to try and do so many squats that your legs don't work anymore, but you try and do manageable sized reps and try and keep doing that for about 20 minutes. Something interesting happens. So if I get somebody like a really top class cyclist to do that, something interesting would happen. They would find that their cardiovascular endurance would start to suffer. Not just their muscle fatigue, not just that, their lungs and their heart would start to get tough to keep up. Now, maybe their stamina in those muscles might outlast it. Different people might work differently, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And what CrossFit are trying to say here is that you can take non-traditional cardio exercises, so body weight exercises, simple, just moving your own body weight, and make it into a cardiovascular endurance exercise or workout, if you want to call it that. So it's interesting, but that's one component. And whenever you think of the best athletes, Rogers Bannister down through history, the top athletes, Kipchoge and Paula Radcliffe and all these kind of semi-famous or famous endurance athletes, you think them as being the peak physical fitness, right? You think of these guys as even some of the cyclists as well, some of the swimmers, you think of them as being the peak of physical fitness. Now, as we will see, if we go down through these different elements of fitness that we've already listed, they might not be as fit in the total sense as we think. But the first one is cardiovascular respiratory endurance, and it is important. It's important to have that baseline. It's important to have that. Like being able to run a 5K without stopping, I would say that's a pretty important baseline to be able to do. Now, you don't have to set a world record time, you don't have to set a personal best, but just being able to do it without stopping, I think that's a pretty baseline requirement, if you want to think of it like that, when it comes to fitness, to being considered fit. Many years ago, whenever I was in my 20s, I wanted to be really good at everything. So I wanted to be really strong, but I wanted to be really fast, but I wanted really good cardiovascular endurance. I wanted to have lots of power, lots of flexibility, lots of good bodyweight movements, good at all these different skills and things. And then you try to improve at all those things, and after a while, yeah, you get so far, But then it's just a matter of thinking, you know what, I'm coming into my mid-30s now, and it's not that I'm trying to, thinking I'm on the way out or anything like that, but I'm more concerned with, can I run a 5K without stopping? Is my training, is my current level of fitness at any given time, whether it's Christmas time, my birthday, the summer, Easter, whatever, throughout the year, could I do a 5K without stopping? And that's kind of as far as I want to take my cardiovascular endurance, if I'm able to do that. Now, when I apply it to other things, I want to be able to do certain workouts, certain things for a certain period of time without stopping. That would be nice. That would be really nice. But if it's other areas that are stopping me from accomplishing that, say that bodyweight circuit that we just discussed, so pull-ups, push-ups, squats, burpees, if I find that my muscles are giving out instead of my lungs, then that's another area I maybe need to work on, if we can't do that for 20 minutes. So that's the first component, cardiovascular/respiratory endurance. So we've got to widen our mindset, widen our horizon, and think about these other 9 components now that we've dealt with this one. So that's a big one, it's an important one, but let's move on to the other ones and see how we shape up, see how you shape up, see how I shape up. The second one we're going to discuss is stamina. So this is the ability of body systems to process, deliver, store, and then utilize energy. The Oxford English Dictionary describes it as the ability to sustain prolonged physical or mental effort. So this will allow you to lift heavier weights for more reps, take longer, tougher hikes, to run faster for longer distances, basically pushing through perceived pain, discomfort, fatigue, all of that stuff. Even just being able to perform daily activities with better energy levels throughout. But the principle with this is, if you want to get better, if you want to improve your stamina, then you need to change something. So whether it's the frequency, whether it's the intensity, whether it's the volume, whether it's the weight, whether it's the distance, whether it's the speed, or rest intervals, you want to increase some component of it. So you want to, and this goes for the first 4. This goes for the cardiorespiratory endurance, goes for stamina, goes for strength, goes for flexibility as well. Basically, you want to progressively overload. You want to change something up with it. So stamina, yeah, a good one would be, being able to do, 10 squats and be able to take it and increase it to 20 squats before you fail, or whatever. Push-ups, being able to do, going from 10 push-ups to be able to do 20 push-ups, stuff like that. Or going for a big, like a row, getting in the row machine and trying to row for longer distance, basically, or trying to cycle further, trying to go further, faster, etc. Then that starts coming into overlapping with other elements like speed, and cardiorespiratory endurance as well. So there's a lot of overlap in some of these, but stamina is basically the ability of your body systems to process, deliver, store, and utilize energy. So it's an interesting one. It's another one, I guess we sometimes use it interchangeably with endurance, but it's not the same thing. But it is important to understand it, and it's another really important aspect of general fitness, in the definition of fitness as we're trying to discuss today and trying to define. Number 3 is strength, the ability of a muscular unit or combination of muscular units to apply force. So another definition you could say is the ability to apply force to an external resistance. So this is a bit more of a general application of it, I guess, because you can apply it to body weight strength. So being able to lift your own body weight, from not being able to do a pull-up to being able to do a pull-up, that is an increase in strength. Now after you're able to do a few pull-ups, it starts going into the realms of stamina and endurance. But if you're able to maybe do a few, maybe you can do 5 pull-ups, that's your max. Then you add a bit of weight, maybe put on a weight belt, or you put a dumbbell between your knees and you try and do another pull-up, and you start increasing that loading, or you increase in body weight. That's the other alternative as well, and you're able to do the 5 reps. That's increasing strength. The more traditional thought, whenever you think of strength, is being able to lift, say, a barbell, doing a deadlift, taking your deadlift from 50 kilos to 150 kilos, taking your deadlift from 150 kilos to 250 kilos, or taking your back squat from 50 kilos to 150 kilos, whatever. But basically there's an external load that you have to shift But again, it's another really important component of fitness, and it's one that's often overlooked. Whenever you think of the great, people who you consider to be the peak of physical fitness, whether it be Mo Farah, whether it be whoever, I'm trying to think of other ones. I want to say Lance Armstrong, but he's a doper, so he's famous though, isn't he? But you can't argue that he had great stamina and great cardiorespiratory endurance ability. But who has it? Yeah, Kipchoge, what do you call him? I was gonna say, what do you call it? Steve Redgrave, that guy. Some of these great medal winners, Olympic medal winners who we consider to be top athletes, Kelly Holmes and all of these guys. You consider those guys to be, who else? Craig Kenny, Laura Kenny, and Chris Hoy. Those are the guys. You consider those guys to be the peak of physical fitness. Now, likes of Chris Hoy is an interesting one because he had enormous strength. I'm sure he still does, but he did have enormous strength when he was at the peak of his powers, winning gold medals and things. But he also had amazing stamina. He had amazing cardiorespiratory fitness. He was pretty well rounded. So I think if you go through all of these 10, he's an interesting one. He's one that's probably going to come out pretty well at the end of it. But if you consider Mo Farah, is he strong? Could he back squat 100 kilos? I don't think he could have. At his strongest, I don't think he could have. No, he could have trained up to do that. And it's something that he could have benefited from getting stronger. I'm sure he did some weight training, but again, they're probably different ends of the spectrum. Okay, of the fitness spectrum, you got cardiorespiratory and stamina on one side. You've got strength and power on the other side. But strength is a very general adaptation, and it can benefit lots of other things. So it's an interesting one. Again, it is a massively important aspect of total fitness. If you can't shift your own body weight, if you can't apply force to whatever, the ground, to do a push-up, to push yourself up off the floor, to squat, to down and lift yourself up, to climb up over things, if you can't do that, can you be considered physically fit? The other thing is that when you're stronger, it makes everything else feel a lot easier. So it makes lesser loads feel easier. If you've got a good top end strength, it translates into making other more repetitive exercises easier. Less, you have to use less energy to complete the task. But I'm always banging on about strength, and I'm always banging on about the importance of it, so I'll not elaborate any more on that. There's plenty of podcast episodes dedicated exclusively to strength and why it is such an important aspect of physical fitness. So have a listen to those if you want any more on that. Our fourth one is flexibility. So this is the ability to maximize the range of motion at a given joint. So full range of motion, as is more commonly known, and we refer to it as. So this is a really interesting one as well, because again, if you go to maybe see a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, and they're not very flexible. I guess a bodybuilder's a classic example. They can't, as if they're walking with two TVs under each arm, or they can't kind of reach around to scratch their own back because their lats are so huge. They've developed a lot of muscle mass in their lats and their upper back and things, so their shoulders, so it's hard to reach around. But that's flexibility. But more so than that, I guess it's one of those things that we will downgrade as we age unless we do something about it, and it's something that's often overlooked. The importance of flexibility, being able to, touching your toes is probably seen as the benchmark for flexibility, right? If you can't touch your toes, you're not flexible. That's generally what we say. Now, there are a lot of other flexibility issues. There are things like your hips rotating properly, extending properly, and flexing properly. Maybe you're squatting down to depth. That if that's an issue for you, can you be considered physically fit? I would suggest not. If you want to have the standard of being fit or not fit, I think being able to squat to parallel has to be up there, barring injuries and physical restrictions through no fault of your own. I guess there has to be allowances made for that, of course, but I'm talking if you're trying to tell me you're fit, how can you squat to depth? What about your shoulder flexibility? Can you reach round with one arm and put your up your back and then reach down from the top with your other hand and meet your fingers somewhere along your back? It's hard to describe what I'm talking about, but hopefully you know what I mean. Can you do that on both sides? if you can't, there's a shortage, there's a lack of range of motion in your shoulders. There's other aspects of it as well. Ankle, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, so extending your foot and bringing it back up again. How are you with that? Because if that's not good, your squat's not going to be good. It means your hips are going to have to do more. So there's lots of areas. It says any given joint. So those are the main ones: the ankles, the hips, the shoulders. I guess those are the ones that, because they can do the most things, they can go the furthest, and they can move in the most directions. They're the ones that tend to get a bit tighter and seize up. Things like your knees and your ankles, they're, not so much. Wrists, I guess, they can seize up as well, but they're not used to full range of motion, I guess, as to the same degree of importance as your ankles. There's a lot more. Everyone's kind of stacked on top of your ankles and your feet, so if there's something missing there, then it's gonna, upstream there's gonna be issues as well. So flexibility is another really important aspect of physical fitness. By the way, there's loads more on this stuff on the CrossFit.com website. I want to make sure I'm giving them credit for lots of this material that I'm talking about today and discussing. It's basically their definition, and I'm just drawing some things out from it. But there's lots more detail on it. There's lots of videos on it, and an important point to make is the distinction they make between the first four in this list of 10 and the last four. So the first four: cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, strength, and flexibility. They consider these to be organic. So they consider these to be something that you can see. If you put it under a microscope, you can see, you can measure it. So cardiorespiratory endurance, like we said, VO2 max, that can be measured. You can almost see the lungs and their capacity. Stamina is another thing that's easy to measure. Strength is another thing that is easy to measure. You can see the size of the muscle. You can measure the strength of the muscles. And flexibility is pretty easy to measure in real terms as well, with a ruler or a tape measure or whatever. The other thing is that they all require progressive overload. They require ever increasing capacity to improve upon them, and that's what training is. You're trying to gradually increase the intensity, increasing the difficulty, but you create an adaptation. So that like we always say about strength, if you're doing something today to equip you to do something a little bit further the next time. So whether that's flexibility, or whether that's getting stronger, or whether that's improving your stamina, or whether that's improving your cardiorespiratory endurance, you're creating an adaptation. You're forcing the adaptation through training. So I thought that's an important aside. Do check out this CrossFit.com videos, because it's interesting. It's really, really interesting, and it gives you a nice synopsis, gives you a nice overview of what total fitness is, what it looks like, and see if you've got any holes in your game. If you consider yourself to be a good runner, how's your stamina? How's your strength? How's your flexibility? How's your power? How's your speed? Those are other things that maybe you need to work upon or improve upon if you've got a good cardiorespiratory endurance level and stamina. Number 5 is power. Power. That's one of those words you get caught out, so you can tell I'm not posh by how I pronounce that word, right? So this is the ability of a muscular unit or a combination of muscular units to apply maximum force in minimum time. This one really gets me, right? Because powerlifting. So you do squat, bench press, deadlift. Those are the 3 exercises you do in powerlifting meets, powerlifting competitions. I, for the life of me, do not know why it's called powerlifting, because this is not a display of power. It's a display of strength. So by this definition, this is the correct definition, more or less. The ability of a muscular unit or a combination of muscular units to apply maximum force in minimum time. Now, you don't have to, if you're going to go do a heavy deadlift, you don't have to get it done in half a second. You can take 10 seconds to lift it to the top. Same with a squat, you could take a long time to get it back, down below parallel and back up. Same with the bench press. So it's a really funny one. Why is powerlifting called powerlifting when it's not a display of power? If you know the answer, again, send it in to me. I would love to know. It's a display of speed, but this is what power is. So Olympic weightlifting is quite a good example of this. So trying to throw a barbell, like it's hundreds of kilos above your head whenever you weigh like 90 kilos. It's crazy, but that's what those guys can do, those girls can do. They can throw a lot of weight above their head in a split second through the snatch, through the clean, and then through the jerk. Those are incredible displays of power. That's what power is. Now number 6 is going to be speed. We're going to talk about it, but they're similar in some ways, but they both require you genetically to have fast twitch muscle fibers. Now some people say you can train these things. Maybe you can to a certain extent. Well, you can to a certain extent, but it's quite minimal. You're generally born with power, with the capacity for power and the capacity for speed. So a good example is if you were to go round, if I was a scout and I was looking for somebody to be in my basketball team or my rugby team or even soccer, whatever. If I was looking for someone to play in those sports, if I was a coach of any one of those things, say I was a scout. The scouts are the guys who really should earn the big bucks. Those are the guys who pick athletes. They don't create them. The coaches don't create them. Now they can refine their skills through practice. Okay, they can refine other aspects, and we're going to talk about that later on in the final 4. But their power and their speed, they're generally born with that because of their mum and dad. That's generally what happens. That's generally why they're gifted with those things. They're given that at birth, and then obviously can train it or not train it as they choose. But if I was to measure your vertical jump whenever you were 18, and say you had a huge vertical jump, that would immediately tell me that you have a lot of power and a lot of capacity for power. So you can recruit a lot of muscle units very, very quickly, and this is very important for lots of sports. This is everything from reaction to jumping higher, like everything. It impacts so many different sports. It makes you a better athlete, basically. This is one of the determining factors, and it can't really be trained. I know people are going to argue and say it can be trained. I improved this and this and this. You maybe improved your vertical by 2 inches. Brilliant, well done. That is an achievement, but it's not trainable to the same extent as the first 4 that we were talking about. So cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, strength, and flexibility. Those are things that can be trained, and you can increase them more substantially, and it'd be better use of your time basically in trying to train your power or your speed. But it's an interesting one. Power, it's one of those things that you can apply to so many different, basically lots of sports. You're going to be a better athlete, whether it's American football, baseball. The ability to recruit those muscle units in a split second is an incredible ability. It's an incredible gift, and it will set you apart from other people in those things. But it's also important for everyday people to maintain it. If you have a little bit, whatever it is you have, I'm not particularly powerful, I'm not particularly fast, but I want to try and maintain those things for as long as I can, because those are the things that are going to go, right? Our power and our speed, those are the things that will reduce as we age, unfortunately. So it really is a matter of trying to hold on to them. Train them, yes, but try and train the other things around it, and those things will either come up with them or you'll hold on to them. But basically, you don't want to neglect them either, is what I'm saying. I don't want you to think that I'm saying never practice trying to get faster, never practice power, because you probably have potential you haven't tapped into yet. But what I'm saying is, if I was to measure your vertical jump and you were getting like, I don't know, 48 inches or something crazy, compared to someone who's getting like 18 inches, 20 inches, you that person was clearly born with those fast twitch muscle fibers and able to recruit them much, much quicker. The other person, even if they're stronger, they can maybe do an incredible squat, but they can't recruit the muscle units quick enough to generate the force to produce that size of a jump. Number 6, speed. So in keeping with power, again, this one's hard to train. It's hard to train in the sense that it's hard to improve significantly upon what you have genetically been allotted. So this is the ability to minimize the time cycle of a repeated movement. So speed, who do we think of when we think of speed? Usain Bolt, okay? Has to be Usain Bolt. Incredible athlete, phenomenal freak of nature. He shouldn't be as fast, he defies physics, doesn't he? He defies physics, his dimensions. He shouldn't be able to run 100 meters that quick. His reaction shouldn't be that fast. He's got scoliosis. He's his legs are so long. He should be better at like 400 meters and 200. He's incredible at 200 meters as well. But it's the ability to minimize the time cycle for repeated movement. So that stride, those strides, that's incredible, isn't it? It really is incredible. And again, he's got power and speed. You can see it in somebody like Usain Bolt. You can see those things recruited in a moment, like sub 10-second 100 meters. Me and you would, like 10 seconds, we wouldn't even be 50 meters into it probably. It's just incredible. So people are gifted with acts of that. I think they're phenomenal. And sometimes it's easy to look at those guys and be like, well, they were born like that, right? Yes they were, but he had to put in the work, because guess what? There's lots of other people born with incredible gifts as well of power and speed. And if you ever watch, there's a DVD actually about Usain Bolt. I got it for Christmas a few years ago, and it's incredible just seeing the background, seeing what he put himself through every season, whenever he's trying to get himself in the top peak physical condition. He would be throwing up, he'd be pulling a really light sled, he'd be trying to improve those things, he'd be trying to train those things. Yes, he had it. Yes, he tried it, but he wanted more. He wanted to be so far above his competitors. He knew he had a gift, but he had to practice. He had to work at it. He had to train. He did the other things. He did strength training, did flexibility training. He had to do lots of stuff to help his scoliosis and to stop his back from getting sore and hindering his training, hindering his progress, hindering his speed. But he's the guy you think of when you think of speed, isn't he? He's just synonymous with the name Usain Bolt. I mean, the things he's achieved, the medals he's won. Imagine training for 4 years for a 10-second race. Not even 10 seconds. Unreal. But it's another aspect, and it's important. It's an important aspect of fitness. Is something else to be considered. If you're going to be physically fit, I think you need to have a bit of speed, right? Now, as I said, those things go down as we age. Those fast-twitch muscle fibers just aren't as responsive as they were when you were 20. That's whenever you're 60. But it's important to still try and hold on to it, as it is with power. Number 7, coordination. So this is the ability to combine several distinct movement patterns into a singular distinct movement. So some things that come to mind are swimming, tennis, baseball, those are dancing. Dancing could even be considered a display of coordination. Well, it's a really good display of coordination actually. It's probably one of the better ones. But there's so much going like skipping. Skipping is another one. But it's one of those things that it requires a lot of juggling. Juggling is another one. You wouldn't think juggling is might be one of the first things to think of when you think of coordination, but it is an aspect. It is coordination on display very visibly, but it is important. It's important for fitness, because if you're not moving with coordination, you're gonna be wasting effort and wasting energy. So say you're mad, like you're really fit compared to your competitors. If you're not coordinated, it's not going to matter, is it? I guess a long jump is a really good, or high jump is quite a good one. So you might have the power, you might have the speed, you might have the strength, you might have those things. You're able to run up to the line, and you're able to get mad distance. But if you can't coordinate your feet to hit the mark accurately, I'm going to talk about accuracy later on as well, but you can't coordinate yourself to hit it as well as possible, and either you go over the line or you go too early. No matter what your jump is, because the margins are so fine with your competitors, and the level of competition is so tight, you're probably going to give away several inches, and therefore you're going to give away medals. Same thing with high jump. So if you're approaching the pole and you're trying to lift yourself off, you have to organize your feet, you have to organize your strides, you have to leap and adjust your body position into a shape that's going to allow you to get over the bar without knocking it over. So it's the ability basically to use different parts of your body together smoothly and efficiently, and it's another overlooked aspect of fitness, but it's important. It is important, and you can see it on display at certain athletic events, but it's important as an all-round type of skill, I guess you could call it. And it does take practice, so it's not like you can keep making it more difficult to get better at it. I guess you have to keep practicing. It's one of those things you have to keep practicing, keep things the same, but practice. Number 8 is agility. So agility is the ability to minimize transition time from one movement pattern to another. So we often think of this in, I guess, hurdles is a good example. Whenever you see track and field, you see people hurdling, skateboarding, anything that requires. So again, balance and coordination are all these actually are quite interlinked. Coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. But agility is, say a windsurfer, or we were at the beach the other day and we seen kite surfers. Incredible. My mind was just blown. I was just standing on the beach watching these guys and throwing all sorts of shapes, catching, like being able to control the kite and with their hands, and then adjusting their body and their weight. Unbelievable. Really, really impressive skill. But again, a lot of agility required. Same with surfing. Same with maybe wakeboarding or skiing, snow skiing, water skiing, any of those things. There's agility required there. It's the ability to minimize transition time from one movement pattern to another. So if you're pretty well rounded in all of these 10 components of fitness, you're probably going to be able to have a go at kite surfing and not be terrible at it. Obviously, it's going to take practice, but the idea would be to be so good at all of these things, to be a certain level with all of these things, that you could just try different sports, you could try different things and not suck at it. Basically. Number 9, we're getting there, near the end. Balance. So balance is the ability to control the placement of the body's centre of gravity in relation to its support base. So balance is required in almost everything. If you don't have any balance, you fall over. That's why having big toes is so important, right? That's why basically having your hair, not having your inner ear smashed up, that can affect your balance. Your vision can affect your balance. If you can't see, if you ever try standing on one leg and close your eyes, in fact, close your eyes and then try and stand on one leg, do it that way and see how you get on. Let me know. Try it in each leg. If you can do it for 30 seconds in each leg, I will shake your hand. I'll tell one of your jokes. That's what I'll do for you in the next episode. But video and send it in to me. But balancing is important for pretty much every display of athletic and fitness display. If you're doing a heavy back squat, you need to be able to balance, otherwise you're going to land the bar off of you. If you're doing, say you're going for a run, you need to be able to balance, otherwise you'll topple over. If you're jumping, you need to be able to balance, to be able to land, be able to take off with that balance. So it's another important aspect of fitness, and it's another one that we sometimes take for granted, but it's an important one to practice again. It's another one you want to practice. So doing something like standing on one leg, closing your eyes, take away something, some sort of feedback. Whenever you have your eyes open, that's a feedback for your balance. That's a feedback loop. If you look at the wall, it's a feedback loop. If you look at the floor, it makes it even easier. It's a better feedback loop. If you close your eyes altogether, it's really difficult. It's hard to describe how difficult it is until you try it. But I get guys in here, we train, we do things like lunges, Bulgarian split squats, one-legged RDLs, and balance, agility, coordination, things like that. Those are really challenged, but especially balance. Balance is something that a lot of people, we think we have until we're tested and it goes missing. So it's another important thing to practice, to make sure it's up to scratch, because as we age, it's only going to get worse unless we do something about it, and the consequences of it getting worse are even more severe. So if you lose your balance and fall over when you're 20, big deal, bit embarrassing, pick yourself up and get on with it. If you fall over whenever you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, it's probably going to be a fracture. It could mean death for some people. So that's why balance, agility, coordination are things that we need to keep practicing. So the last one, number 10, is accuracy. So this is the ability to control movement in a given direction or at a given intensity. So I suppose throwing a basketball would be a good one. Throwing a baseball, throwing's quite a good example all around. Throwing, kicking a ball. So being able to display control, be able to control the movement in a given direction. So trying to put a free kick in the top corner, trying to put a penalty somewhere. Throwing a wall ball is the equivalent in CrossFit, if you're doing CrossFit type things. So wall balls, so squatting down and launching it and trying to hit a 10 foot or 8 foot or whatever height of a target you have. But again, it's important. It's another aspect of fitness that we often don't think about, and rarely do we think about measuring it. Certainly in track and field, for instance, or some of the more popular sports. But accuracy you know, we think of footballers, we think of rugby players, you know, kicking between the posts, and I suppose even like a javelin is accuracy to a certain extent. You have to put it between the lines. You know what I mean? You have to get in with that. It's a big target, but you just have to get it there. I guess I suppose it's one of the few athletic components that darts uses, and golf and snooker. But there's not a lot of other components of fitness being displayed in those sports. But maybe holding a pint, doing curls with pints. But you know what I mean. I'm taking the mick, but you get what I mean. It's kind of funny. I was seeing like the darts competitions, and they get up from having a beer, and then just start throwing darts and trying to get, you know, triple 20. But anyway, those are the 10 components of fitness. What do you think? How do you stack up amongst all of that? Do you think you like, we all have certain strengths. We're all going to come out better on some things than others. Personally, my cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, like not great. Okay, I'd say it's average. That's probably 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Strength's probably somewhere far side of 5, maybe 6, 7. Flexibility's probably somewhere like overall maybe 6. My power's probably something like a 4 or a 3. Speed's probably somewhere similar. Coordination's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 as well. I don't really rate myself very highly on those, just because I've been watching the CrossFit Games and they're all exceptional at so many things. But again, at the same time, you see people exposed. You see people who maybe haven't done those things, and then they get exposed because they haven't practiced them. So another thing that was pointed out whenever you watch some of those CrossFit videos and their concept of fitness and how they define fitness, is that these last 4, so coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy, are all neurological adaptations. And that's an important point to make. They all have to do with how your brain interacts with your muscles. And they're harder to measure. They're harder to measure in the sense that, you know, cutting you open and looking and seeing how you've improved. You can't see if someone's improved their accuracy until you see them throw something or kick something, right? You can't see if someone has, just by looking at their muscles or looking at their bones or looking at whatever, you can't see if their balance has improved just by you know, seeing them I don't know, do a squat. You need to see something. You need to see some sort of display of it. So their lunges have got better. You see them demonstrating that through lunges. Their agility has got better. You can see them, you know, suddenly they couldn't stand up on a surfboard, and now they can stand up and they can kind of kick about on it. You can same thing with coordination. You need to see a display of it. You can't just look at their physical body and see a display of it without them displaying it through practice. Hopefully that makes sense. But the other point is, all of these 4 things, coordination, agility, and balance, and accuracy, they are, to get better at them, you have to practice. It takes repetition. It doesn't take progressive overload like the first 4, but it does take practice. It takes repetitions. If you want to get better at skipping, you want to improve your coordination, agility, balance, accuracy, you can kind of combine all those things with skipping. You need to practice. If you want to get better at wall ball shots, you need to practice. If you want to get better at snooker, you need to practice. Now, it's not terribly physically demanding. Throwing darts isn't terribly physically demanding, but there are neurological adaptations that occur, and you improve upon those through practice. Again, there's probably a certain amount of it genetic, but you can certainly get better at it. You can certainly improve upon it through practice. And it's not as if you're trying to make the darts heavier or trying to make the football heavier to kick it, so you get more power. You train things like squats. You train things where you train your limbs, and you get stronger and you get better at it. So yeah, that is about it. Let me know what you think. Let me know, do you think this is a good definition of fitness? Do you think these 10 components are a good outline of fitness, or do you think there's something missing, or is it getting into too much detail, or are you just like, listen Stuart, I'm a good runner, that's all I need to be, I'm fit, okay? Shove your definitions. Let me know. I'd love to know. Don't want to get in an argument, but like, I would like to know what you think. So our first news story this week, it's actually from the 10th of August, and because there was no show last week, it would have been in last week's show, so we've saved it for this week. And this is on prevention.com. Title of it is, could vitamin D deficiency be the cause of chronic inflammation? New study says yes. Adding vitamin D rich foods, or even some more time in the sun, could be the answer to your chronic inflammation issues. A new study found a correlation between low vitamin D levels and inflammation. Researchers found that correlation of vitamin D deficiency in affected individuals could reduce inflammation and potentially mitigate the risk of chronic inflammatory illnesses. Experts explain what the study's findings mean and if you should consider adding the supplement to your wellness routine. Now, there's a famous study, I'm not sure, I think we did cover it, but with somebody overdosed on vitamin D not that long ago, and there's another one that was saying basically it doesn't help prevent fractures. So it's kind of funny, the following week there's this out about chronic inflammation. So obviously we know we need vitamins, we need sufficient minerals, we need sufficient vitamins. And living in Ireland, I guess, in the UK, we don't often get, throughout the year, enough sunlight to help us produce vitamin D. So it says here, if you're experiencing chronic inflammation, the vitamin D deficiency may be the culprit. A new study published in the International Journal of Epidemiology shows a direct link between low levels of vitamin D and high levels of inflammation, providing an important biomarker to identify those at higher risk of or severity of chronic illnesses with an inflammatory component. Researchers from the University of South Australia examined random genetic data of 294,970 unrelated participants with white British ancestry from the UK Biobank. Researchers looked to show a correlation between vitamin D and C reactive protein levels, which are indicators of inflammation. Prior to the study's findings, we knew that when you don't get enough vitamin D, it may result in higher levels of C reactive protein, which is an indicator of inflammation, says dietitian and nutritionist Jackie Nugent, RDN, CDN. But this study sought to determine whether or not low vitamin D levels actually cause inflammation. The researchers found evidence supporting the theory that vitamin D levels impact C. I think it's CG reactive. It looks like it's kind of a funny font they've used, but I think it's C reactive protein levels, meaning that lower vitamin D levels do trigger the response from the C reactive protein, an indicator of inflammation. The researchers also found no evidence supporting C reactive protein having an impact on vitamin D concentrations. This means that low levels of vitamin D do cause inflammation, but not vice versa. So low levels of vitamin D do cause inflammation. So if you're feeling sore all the time, if you're feeling chronically inflamed, you're feeling achy, whenever something gets inflamed, it just feels nasty, right? It's like someone's rotator cuff flares up on their shoulder and it gets inflamed, and all of a sudden every movement you do with your shoulder is achy. If you haven't been there, count your blessings, because it's horrible. Maybe your lower back, maybe your neck, maybe your nasal passage could get inflamed. I guess that's what happens with stuff like hay fever, right? It's like a bit of inflammation caused there. But so yeah, vitamin D, making sure you're getting enough vitamin D, making sure you get enough sunlight, kind of important. So that's one story, one study to keep an eye on going forward. Give you some other things here. So Matake mushrooms such as white button, cremini, portobello when exposed to UV light. Slightly fortified plants such as plant milk, yogurt, tofu, cereals, orange juice, fortified dairy milk, and yogurt and salmon. So they're saying they're all kind of good sources of vitamin D if you're trying to get that topped up. And then of course supplementation as well. But I'd say getting a bit of sunlight yourself is as good as any, as hard as that is in this country. Next story is from neurosciencenews.com, and this is from the 12th of August, and again it's another vitamin D story. Vitamin D supplementation seems to alleviate depressive symptoms in adults, and an extensive meta-analysis suggests that vitamin D supplementation may alleviate depressive symptoms in adults with depression, conducted by an international team of researchers. The meta-analysis includes dozens of studies from around the world. Depressive symptoms cause a significant disease burden worldwide. The therapeutic efficacy of current antidepressants is often insufficient, which is why further ways to alleviate the symptoms of depression have been sought, for example, from nutritional research. Vitamin D is believed to regulate central nervous system functions, the disturbances of which have been associated with depression. In addition, cross-sectional studies have observed an association between depressive symptoms and vitamin D deficiency. However, previous meta-analysis on the effects of vitamin D supplementation on depression have been inconclusive. In a meta-analysis, results from several different studies are combined and analysed statistically. The new meta-analysis on the association of vitamin D supplementation with depression is the largest one published so far, including results from 41 studies from around the world. These studies have investigated the efficacy of vitamin D in alleviating depressive symptoms in adults by randomized placebo-controlled trials in different populations. The studies included those carried out in patients with depression in the general population and in people with various physical conditions. So the results of the meta-analysis show that vitamin D supplementation is more effective than a placebo in alleviating the depressive symptoms in people with depression. There were major differences in vitamin D doses used, but typically the vitamin D supplement was 50 to 100 micrograms per day. So yeah, pretty interesting. That's another one to keep your eye on. Wouldn't it be great if we could give people who suffer from depression and depressive symptoms a lift with something as simple as vitamin D? I know we always kind of joke about, like good weather puts you in a good mood. If the sun shines, it makes you feel better. But maybe there's more to it than we realise. It's interesting. This study is actually done by the University of Eastern Finland, another place that doesn't really get the sunshine. Next story is from The Independent, and it says, taking short walks after meals helps reduce risk of diabetes and heart problems. Study finds standing instead of sitting after a meal also has benefits. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Because you always hear people saying, like, if you sit down, you digest food better. So this story is from the Monday the 8th of August. Again, would have been in our last one, I think. Yeah, if we had done a show last week. So it goes on to say, going for a walk after a meal can help reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and heart problems. Researchers have suggested. A new study has found that walking for just a couple of minutes after eating is enough to lower blood sugar and insulin levels. Researchers from the University of Limerick analysed the results of 7 studies that compared the effect of sitting or standing and walking after eating. The studies revealed that while standing after a meal is better than sitting, taking a short walk offered the biggest health benefits overall. People who took regular light intensity walks after a meal had lower blood sugar and insulin levels than people who remained seated. Standing up for short periods of time after a meal showed an improvement in blood sugar levels, but not on insulin, according to the study published in the Sports Medicine Journal. Participants in 5 of the studies did not have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, while the other 2 studies had a mix of people with or without it. All the studies showed that walking for a few minutes after a meal caused the participants' blood sugar levels to rise and fall more gradually instead of fluctuating quickly. Aidan Buffy, that's quite the name, lead author of the study, told The Times that the findings were in line with the advice from the World Health Organization and other health bodies to physically move more. He added that blood sugar levels that repeatedly spike after eating and insulin produced to control them may lead to the development of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular problems. With standing and walking, there are contractions of your muscles, he said, explaining that these encourage the muscles to use glucose and lowers levels in the bloodstream. If you can do physical activity before glucose peak, typically 60 to 90 minutes after eating, that is when you're going to have the benefit of not having the glucose spike. Well, I guess it's like what we say, we try to encourage people to eat something before they do some training, right? And 60 to 90 minutes is probably an optimal amount of time. So it's interesting, but it's not that surprising, I guess. But I guess it depends how intense your activity is. But a gentle walk, yeah, why not? Go for it. Treat yourself, yeah, right? I mean, it's about as good as treats get these days. Next one is from Medical News Today, and this is from, I'm trying to find a date, don't see a date. It was in the last week or so, but it's called, it's going to get me going here. Oh, sorry, it's on the 8th of August 2022. Plant-based meat alternatives really are healthier, new review suggests. Did the review suggest it, or did the people that wrote the review suggest? It's funny how they put this in something like this, and then they put it forward as if it's like an open study that was done, like an objective study, instead of putting forward the interpretations of it. So it says the plant-based meat and dairy alternative markets have skyrocketed in popularity over the past few years. Researchers from the University of Bath found evidence suggesting these products are better for both our health and the environment. Yeah, it's far better for the environment to fly almonds from California to Ireland to get, so we have almond milk, right? It's obviously going to be better. Why is it even called milk? You ever wonder that? Why is it called almond milk or oat milk? Like it should be called juice, if anything, or water. I don't know. If you know the answer, send it on a postcard, and I'm interested to hear. Plant-based meat and dairy products are rapidly growing industries. Experts value the global plant-based meat market. Plant-based meat. It's like, they shouldn't even be calling it meat. I mean, it's not meat. It's plants. Meat is meat. You can't change the the reality of it, that meat is meat. You can't just start making up words and fixing words in front of it to make it sound as if it's something legitimate. It's not meat. It's worth over $5 billion last year, with forecasts expected to increase by 19% from 2022 to 2030. And the plant-based dairy alternatives market reportedly totaled $11 billion in 2020, with projections to hit 32 million. Wait a second. Say they're total 11 billion in 2020, with projections to hit 32 million in 2031. Does that mean it's going to drop off? I think there's something wrong there with that one. But anyway, now a new study from the University of Bath says that plant-based meat and dairy products are both better for human health and environment. The new study recently appeared in the journal Future Foods. I guess that's in spite of, plant-based diets being, lacking in vitamin A, vitamin B6, B12, D, F, K2, carnitine, cholesterol, creatine, taurine, all of those things. Apart from that, okay, just off the top of my head, what are plant-based meat and dairy products? Meat alternative products first appeared in the 1960s. That's crazy to go as far back as that. And it's always, soy. They were made from soy. Later, alternatives made of texturized vegetable protein. Oh. I'm getting a bit sick in my mouth just reading that. Sorry. I guess you can understand where I stand in this discussion. I've given it away. Today's plant-based meat alternative products use ingredients like soy, pea protein, oils, potato starch, and various binders and flavourings to closely mimic the texture and taste of real meat. Why fake it? Why fake it? Why not eat the meat? It's delicious. It's so good. So good. Can't express it. Like, why go to all that bother processing all of these things together to make something that is supposed to be similar texture and taste to real meat? You just eat a meat. Just eat meat. Simple. Go to your butcher's, get a steak. Just like that. It's much less energy intensive. The cow does it all for you. Plant-based alternatives to cows, milk dairy products received a much earlier start, with the first reported soy milk in China about 2,000 years ago. Although soy milk products continue to be popular, they now share store shelves with dairy alternatives made from oats, rice, almonds, hemp, and coconut. It's not milk though, is it? Like, it's not. Milk comes from some sort of a breast, some sort of literally an animal. This is juice. This is I don't know what you would call it. It's not milk though. And today's dairy alternative products have expanded from just a milk type beverage to include alternatives for yogurt, butter, cheeses, and ice cream. Plant-based versus real meat and dairy products. For the study, Dr. Bryant and his team. Let me guess. I bet you Dr. Bryant is either paid by somebody in this industry, or he's a vegan himself. And his team reviewed 43 studies looking at the health and environmental factors of plant-based meat and dairy alternatives. Researchers also examined consumer attitudes toward plant-based foods. Based on their research, the team found that 90% of consumers who ate plant-based meat and dairy products followed a flexitarian diet, whatever that means, which allows for moderate animal meat consumption. Researchers also found that people, I would agree that most of your plate should be plant-based. I mean, as opposed to cardboard. You don't need that much meat, but you do need like over 30 grams per meal. Okay, the average human. If you're a large human, if you metabolize it quicker, then you're probably going to need more. But that's just a starting point. But yeah, nothing wrong with them. I give people that advice all the time, is to fill your plate. If you're trying to lose weight, fill your plate up with vegetables. Absolutely. Researchers also found that people tended to choose plant-based meat products that were similar in taste, texture, and price to real meat. Yeah, well, there'd be no point in you couldn't call it plant-based meat if it doesn't taste, feel, smell, or have the texture of real meat. I don't know. I just find it hard to get my head around of all this. Plant-based meat is an easy and convenient way to directly replace meat in familiar dishes, so that makes it's not an easy and convenient way. It takes a lot of processing to do it, so it's not easy or convenient. But you can just buy it. I suppose it's convenient for the end consumer, but all of the other process that goes on before that. So it says here, are plant-based substitutes really healthy. According to Dr. Bryant, the purpose of this study is to investigate the healthiness and environmental sustainability of plant-based animal product alternatives. Now, again, this gets into the problem of what do we mean by healthy. Your version of healthy and mine might be different. Your version of healthy and Dr. Bryant's might be different. There seems to be a lot of misinformation on this topic and misconceptions based on the idea that such products are processed or unnatural. I don't think that's misinformation or misconceptions. You've literally said it above there. Many people may have the intuition that this means these products are unhealthy or bad for the environment, but as the study showed, the evidence suggests the opposite. In fact, plant-based animal product alternatives are healthier, more environmentally sustainable than the animal products they replace. That's incorrect, and we'll talk about that, why that's incorrect later, but okay. Researchers report evidence that plant-based dairy and meat products help lower greenhouse gas emissions. Who cares? Require less water and land. That's also not true. And produce less pollution than animal products. And Dr. Bryant's team found that not only were plant-based alternatives valid options for weight loss and muscle building, again they're not, because we know that the body cannot metabolize and cannot use the protein that comes from plants as well as from animals. Maybe they just ignored that study, but that's not true either. But they offered us an easier option to add ingredients to offer additional health benefits such as amino acids, vitamins and antioxidants. Based on this review of the evidence, plant-based animal product terms tend to be healthier than animal products, Dr. Bryant noted. In particular, he specified overweight patients can benefit from switching from chicken to mycoprotein, which will increase their fiber intake, increase satiety with fewer calories, and decrease insulin response. Chicken's like really lean. Like, I mean, you have to have 120 gram chicken. 120 grams of chicken is going to be like, what, less than 100 calories? That's nothing. And you can't fake things like satiety. You can't just like stuff it full of fiber. Fiber's great, but if you get too much of it, not so good. When we clean out your cage, plant-based animal product alternatives can also help lower cholesterol. If you want to find out more about cholesterol, Google Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. Maybe even buy his book called The Great Cholesterol Con. And just to give you a better understanding of cholesterol and how we've arrived at the conclusion that less cholesterol is better and why that is a fallacy. Again, not a doctor, I'm not a health professional, so don't take this as health advice. I'm just saying, look it up, and you can come to your own conclusions. So plant-based animal products alternatives can also help lower cholesterol and provide benefits for gut health. He continued, making these simple switches can have a substantial health benefits. So Medical News Today also spoke to Lauren Seppi, a clinical nutritionist and in-house nutritionist at the Kelman Wellness Center in New York City, about the study. Seppi said that many of the points raised in the study regarding health and environmental issues surrounding animal meat are general concerns, so she cautioned from a nutrition perspective that today's plant-based meat substitutes products are a mixed bag due to some of the less healthy ingredients they may contain. Some of the ingredients in these alternatives I find questionable, and in large quantities may not be the healthiest choice, she explained. That's fair. That's pretty. It's a more balanced approach than I was expecting from them. But to include, that being said, for people who are looking for the experience of eating a burger without eating meat, there are. Just eat the burger. Just eat it. It's fine. Honestly, it tastes great without eating meat. These are a good occasional option. I do not recommend them as a staple of their diet, as although people see plant-based foods as healthier options, many are still highly processed, so you have to be selective in your choices. Seppi continued. Caution, sorry. She added that although these types of food certainly have a role to play in providing plant-based options for people as an alternative to meat options, more research is required in the overall health of these lab-produced foods. I mean, that says it all, lab-produced foods. I mean, how processed do you want your food? Really? I know it's illegal now, but it really shouldn't be. But like, if you had a herd of cows, you could literally go out there, slaughter it yourself, skin it, dice it up, and cook it and eat it, and that's as much processing as needs to be done. Really, it's minimal. It's minimal, really. I like the fact that this study is bringing to light the detrimental conditions on these farms and the environmental impact, but it leaves the option of smaller local farms out of the discussion, which is really a completely different category than conventional feedlot animals, she said. So pretty interesting point there actually at the end. I mean, you can get different qualities of meat. You can get different cuts. You can get highly processed meat, as well, and to bundle it all together. I mean, there's a big thing now about grass-fed beef, and I think that goes down the route of it's more ethical. You know, the cow's a better life, and it's treated better. It lives better, and it's more, it's just more ethically and more ethical and more friendly to the earth as well, and to, you know, making sure that things aren't getting overused, like crops and soil and land. It's not like battery farming chickens. It's not, you know, nobody's saying those things are all right, or they're good, or they're advisable, but to basically write off eating meat, because you personally don't want to eat it, I think it's absolutely lunacy, and we have to throw an awful lot of science and a lot of understanding and a lot of studies out the window to make that happen. And in our last study, you'd nearly think I set this up, but honestly, it did appear in the same week. This was on Thursday, the 11th of August. Women on vegetarian diets more likely to break their hips, study finds. This is from Sky News. Researchers found female vegetarians see their risk of hip fracture increase by 33% compared to those who eat meat. It's probably for the reasons that we just said there about all the vitamin deficiencies that you're going to get if you're eating exclusively plants. They said a possible reason for this could be vegetarian diets often have lower intakes of nutrients that are linked with bone and muscle health. Yes, they are. Researchers from the University of Leeds found female vegetarians see their risk of hip fracture increase by 33% compared to those who eat meat. They said a possible reason is vegetarians often have lower intakes of nutrients and are linked with bone and muscle health. More than 26,000 women aged 35 to 69. Did that say young women? No, it's just women, sorry. More than 20, I was going to say 69 isn't young, even by my parents' stretch of the imagination. More than 26,000 women aged 35 69 from across the UK took part in the study. 26,000 is quite a lot, isn't it? It assessed the risk of hip fracture among vegetarians, pescatarians, those who eat fish but not meat, and occasional meat eaters compared with regular meat eaters. After around 20 years, researchers noted 822 hip fractures among the women, around 3%, and that an elevated risk of hip fracture was only among female vegetarians compared with women who regularly consumed meat. The data was drawn from the UK Women's Cohort Study, which is tracking women over time to assess the risks between diet and health. Among the group of women, 28% are vegetarian and 1% are vegan. Study lead author James Webster said, "Our study highlights potential concerns regarding the risk of hip fracture in vegetarian women. However, it is not warning people to abandon vegetarian diets." No, they wouldn't do that. Absolutely not. They would never do that. As with any diet, it is important to understand personal circumstances and what nutrients are needed for a balanced, healthy lifestyle. He added vegetarian diets often have lower intakes of nutrients that are linked with bone and muscle health. These types of nutrients generally are more abundant in meat and other animal products than in plants, such as protein, calcium, and other micronutrients. Lower intake of these nutrients can lead to lower bone mineral density and muscle mass, which can make you more susceptible to hip fracture risk. Researchers said further research is needed to assess whether there could be similar results found among men. Studies have been published in the journal BMC Medicine. So, kind of funny that appeared in the same week, that study, after them saying how healthy a plant-based diet was compared to a meat-based diet, compared to a meat diet and plant-based alternatives, fake meat in other words. But it kind of shows you, doesn't it? I mean, you can read one headline and suddenly you just would stop eating meat, but if you miss this headline, you know, you don't get the balance. So it is important whenever you see sensational headlines, and the media does it every week. That's kind of why we point this stuff out. The journalists don't tend to write things in a balanced way. They do that for all sorts of reasons. One is clicks. Number two is, you know, their jobs. They're going to get more clicks, better job security, more promotions, more money generated for the media outlet who they are working for, all of that stuff. So to make a sensational headline is obviously going to be in their best interest and not in our best interests, because we get a skewed version of what's going on. There's also, I don't know if you've noticed it, but there's a massive agenda and a push to make everybody vegetarian and vegan these days. It just seems to be getting more and more and gathering more and more pace. Now on the other side of it, there seems to be a huge pushback, and there's like lots of carnivores popping up as well. So getting into that, if I had to go one way, I would go carnivore, but just then. But yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Like there's these sensational headlines, but what can you do if you're a vegetarian or you don't eat that much meat, you don't like meat? Okay, I get it. Like, you know, I'm not a complete idiot. Like, I do get people with different tastes, but if you know that your risk of hip fracture in particular is going to be increased by 33% by not eating meat, what can you do about it? Obviously, supplementation is something, but what about strength training? Strength training has been shown to help increase bone mineral quality and density. So that's the other thing that I think is worth suggesting to you that you should look into for that one. But yeah, more interesting stuff. Again, don't suddenly change your lifestyle or uproot your life based upon this. I'm sure you won't. I mean, I'm always harping on it, this is literally my life, is trying to encourage people how to, you know, do certain things, eat certain things, eat in a certain way that will help them manage their weight or lose weight and get in shape and, you know, build muscle, lose fat and all of that. And they don't do it. So I don't think me reading sensational headlines is going to do it. But having said that, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor. So don't take medical advice from a podcast. Is what I'm going to sign off on this one with. But get a bit of balance. Whenever you read these studies, look for an alternative as well. Look for different viewpoints and see where the truth lies. Look for holes in studies as well. Look for holes in journalism. Look for things that they haven't talked about. I think having a critical mind these days is more important than ever. Right, it's joke of the week time. This one's a cracker. Prepare yourself. This week I accidentally drank invisible ink. I'm actually at the hospital waiting to be seen. Okay, that's about it. Let's get out of here. It's the weekend. Yeah, enjoy your weekend. Let me know your thoughts on fitness, whether you think these are good definitions of fitness or whether it's a load of rubbish. Let me know. Let CrossFit know as well. I'm sure they'd love that. Hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget, we do still have some places available in our large group classes, which are on every evening from 6:15 to 7 p.m. and Saturday mornings from 8:15 to 9 a.m. And we've got a couple of spots available for one-to-ones if anyone would like some of those in the evenings from 5 to 6 o'clock available. Had a few people transition into our semi-private classes, which are filling up nicely after the summer. Yeah, lots of stuff happening. We've got our open gym service available as well. If you want to come in and train yourself outside of class and PTR anytime from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m, you're welcome to do that. You can apply on the website, and we will get back to you within 24 hours, and we can try and arrange an induction, get some forms signed to get you signed up to that, get your fingerprint on the door, and get you training. Really, the reason we set up the open gym was because we realised how important it is for progress that you have consistent training, and it's not always possible. There's only so many hours in the day, there's only so many hours in the week that myself and Jack are able to work and able to train people. So we realize it's really important that if you want to try and make progress and really see headway, that you do things consistently. You're getting in 2-3 plus sessions a week. So that's why open gym exists. That's why we spent a bit of money getting lots of stuff up and running for it, and it took a bit of time, but we're there. If you currently train in the open gym and you would like to share with friends, do tell them, let them know. Remember, members get it for less than half price, £15 a month. If you're not a member, it's £31 a month. It's $273 for the year. So plenty of discounts. We want to give our members, really want to honour them and thank them for training with us. So that's why we want to give a massive discount to you guys. And if you're not a member, why not? Join up. There's loads of classes, loads of things on offer. So yeah, do get involved, and I will see you next week. Hopefully we should have a special guest available for that. Have a great weekend. Don't forget, train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.